Hello again. Welcome to the week 9 session. We are discussing today two important elements. In the first part of the discussion, we will do supply chain management for operation management point of view, and then we will continue our discussion in the next session about risk management in context of project management. So supply chain management is one of the important element of the operations management. We need to talk how supply chain was first used in history and how it became part of the business, and now how businesses are dependent totally on the supply chain to be more successful if they have end-to-end a network for the upstream and downstream supply chain. Looking into the supply chain, just the to give you a quick historical background, supply chain was first used as a military term in the early 1900s to describe the process of getting food, weapons, ammunitions, etc. to the front line of battles. So in the war, military were using this term to supply different, for example, food and weapons to the main front line of the battle, and for the infantry, it involved creating supply points between the military base and the battlefield. And they used logistics. Of course, transportation was also a military-related word. This was first used in 1838, for example, in the historical, if you review the history of supply chain management, and you see how it came into being, because the art of the war, where the military were doing transportation of different logistics, they used the term logistic within supply chain management, and it basically generated by the Napoleon General Army back in 1830-38, for example. So let's see what exactly in business term today we mean by supply chain management. There is a very interesting quick clip of video which was uploaded in the week 9 workshop. You can watch in your own time. Supply chain management is basically the management of the flow of goods and services that include all processes that transform raw material into final product. So that is a quick definition in few words, and then you can see the supply chain management basically involves the active streamlining of businesses supply side activities to maximize customer value and gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace. That means supply chain management is the basically the process to handle the entire production or the entire business process flow of good or services to enhance the quality, delivery, customer experience, and profitability. So the top level of this business model, which has different processes inside as a key component of supply chain management. For example, how you do planning, sourcing different products, materials from raw to the finished product, manufacturing or making, producing, delivery, and again is not just selling the product or delivering to the end users, but if there is something wrong with the product, then the return policy, how that can also be the part of the process of supply chain management. If you're gonna see deep inside each component, that from the planning, how it is imperative to the controlling of inventory and manufacturing processes, we can see that supply chain is basically comprised of all the businesses and individual contributors involved in creating a product from raw material to finish usable or the end product for the consumers, which is consumable. Examples of supply chain activities include let's say farming, refining from the raw material when the cultivation is done, and harvesting, and then the crop is going in, let's say in agriculture, we in the farming business, and then we go for refining, designing, manufacturing, packaging, transportations, or all the important elements, they are part of the supply chain. So to see quickly that how supply chain basically works, we know that the supply chain is the network of organizations or suppliers or different stakeholders which are involved in different phases and activities that produce value to the end users in the form of product and services. This is equally very important to see the supply chain network have both upstream as well as downstream linkages, and can be often be decentralized or connected to other supply chain as well, sometime being integrated into a single whole part of the supply chain system. So supply chain is a network between companies and its supplier, and at the same time we can see supply chain network represents the steps it takes to get the product or service from its original state to the end consumer. So that is quite interesting network, because for example supply chain activities in farming, how the raw material gonna be sent to this refinery plant, and then how it gonna be going for packaging, and then it gonna be going to retail for sale to reach to the end customers when they purchase this product for consumer final use. So the supply network strategy basically deals with how companies or organization they activate relationship with the suppliers in order to become more efficient and innovative. So in recent history of business or operations management, supply chain management is or logistics is increasingly the emphasis has been within the context of supply chain management. The emphasis has been placed on the ways in which these relationship with various suppliers and business partners, they link companies, for example, in supply chain management have a healthy network. That is more important, how the network can be created. It can be regional or even it can be global, because of the nature of again depends on the nature of business, how we gonna do supply chain management locally, regionally, nationally, or internationally. So we quite have to be careful with the supply chain whole network end to end. So the supply chain management basically is handling of the entire production of the flow of product as well as the services. So supply chain is defined as the entire process of making, selling commercial good, including every stage from supply of material and manufacturing of the good through to their distribution as well as the sale. So successfully managing supply chain is essential to any company hoping to compete or to be successful. So supply chain management is consist of the network of organization or different suppliers. They supply input to the business unit. So it is the network of the supply chain where we can see the logistics, customer is a part or component of this system, information system, suppliers, distribution, and manufacturing. So that is quite important to make sure that the business unit itself is part of the system. Consumer or customers is a part of the network, and again we can see that the supply chain can transfer material that is tangible, but again knowledge, information intangible, and again money transaction or billing and invoices as part of the supply chain management. So a supply chain basically involves a series of steps that involve to get a product or service to the customer. The steps include moving and transforming raw material into finished product, transporting those product and distributing them all the finished product to the end user, and then the information is provided them again if there is a policy for a refund or exchange and the payment or the online transaction, or it depends if this supply chain is going to be from the manufacturing plant to the retail to the customer, or it can again, if it is all arranged through online system, depend on the business model. So supply chain management with upstream and downstream, we can see in this graphical illustration that the product from supplier, let's say if it's a kind of eatable product and we get it from farming, so we have the farm where we get the supply as a raw material, we bring in the plant where they can be manufactured, and when the product is packaged and is ready for use, it's sent through distribution channel to the main warehouses, and it comes to the retail, to the shopping centers or the superstores, and then the people, they go and collect the product and they buy it. So it can be done, it is traditional, or it is can be more contemporary approach, and we can have the both left to right, upstream, and right to left, downstream. Upstream and downstream, we have to see how the information is being disseminated and the product end to end is being supplied, and how the money is collected or the feedback from customer. So basically a supply chain is comprised of all the businesses and the individual contributors they involve in creating a product from raw material to finish mechanism. For example, of supply chain activities include the like farming, refining, designing, manufacturing, packaging, and transportation. So the purpose of the supply chain is to make product available to meet customer demand or their need, and that include delivery to the appropriate location on time and sufficient quantity. So supply chain management is focused on doing that in the most efficient and effective manner. So everything else is a secondary or that's the secondary importance in the whole network of supply chain. So when you go upstream, the raw material is collected, it comes to the organization where they are manufactured, and then downstream, when the information is going to be distributed and it reach to the end user. The supply chain management ecosystem, we have to see how the information system from end to end. So for example, we go to send the information, we need to know what is required, what the customer need and expectations. This information is very important to find out on the reverse order. So it is basically not what we're going to produce, but rather what customer want. So it is more customer oriented approach now, and we find out through survey, feedback, research, review to see what customer want or what is the trend in the market, and we manufacture the product accordingly. And then it is again very important to the downstream flow of information that you have to provide what has been demanded or required to fulfill the order of the consumer or customer. So in the upstream information, these are the key important bullet points that we have to collect from the customer point or the end user or business customer. For example, we need to make a long-term plan, market research, individual order, payment, and potential new product and services to identify for manufacturing or producing. On the fulfillment of this demand or need in the market, that again is important to know the right product to be produced or the service to be offered, and new product and services are there, and delivery of the information, payment request, and credit has to be channelized, and they all are in place. So supply chain information system is the boundary spanning field of supply chain network which the organizations or any company use to acquire, produce, and deliver goods and services all over the world or in a particular region or in a country. The role of the information system basically as the critical enabler for integrating supply chain. So if the information system is not there in supply chain, it will be very difficult to meet the need of the customer and what is the market trend and demand. So the role of information system is supply chain management, or we call it supply chain information system, sharing information which help to establish a better relationship among trading partners from upstream to downstream. And then again, if you take any example, we can see let's say Amazon as one of the key organization or a company that is thriving and successfully growing even during lockdown and COVID. So Amazon supply chain management approach is to embrace technology, the information system. The company utilize countless automation and robotic solution, even both to pick and sometime to not just pick and also packaging and ordering. They also stacking and storing with the inventory through robot system 24/7 operations. So the company has also embraced drone as a delivery, one of the key medium to let different packages can be delivered through drone technology. So that is also launching with the Amazon Prime Air, for example. On the other end, if you see the Nike supply chain information system, Nike supply chain functions around three core organizational principles is developed. They say outsourcing to save cost, diversification to minimize the risk, and they also considering the corporate social responsibility to manage its impact on the world. It works with the eco-friendly supply chain management. So quite important to have the information system in place. But if you look into the let's say supply chain network with the airline or aviation industry, and you take the example of, let's say, A350 or A350 900, how the concept is built and what is the complete supply chain in airline. There is a video to watch in your own time in the week 9 because there are quite potential suppliers. The key potential supplier for the airline industry, we know Airbus and or at the same time Boeing are the two main suppliers for the aircraft. So we know there's basically this dual organization have a duopoly, has the considerable power, and there is no possible of any new suppliers for aircraft to enter in the market because this is very much controlled by this is kind of like monopoly to foresee in future any new entrant other than the dominant position of the Airbus and Boeing. However, it is true that there are very few companies you can go to if you are looking to buy a new airline or aircraft. So the alliances, there are mergers and acquisitions, and they simply not have too much attractions because it's a niche market. It's quite a huge investment, and then the organization, like for example Airbus and Boeing, they have a long history in the industry, and they are quite established and mature. So if you take the example of, for example, the A350XWB, we know this is where we can have the supply chain management if you're manufacturing, if a part of the aircraft. So the supply chain managers, they don't only negotiate with aircraft manufacturer. For example, the senior company executive, they basically looking for the important because of the nature of the complexity of the supply chain task being performed within the aircraft design and manufacturing. So we have to make sure that the aircraft supply is not just the aircraft by itself, how you can make it to different airlines as per their particular need, and their tailored and customized as per their individual approach to look after their customers. And then even when the product is supplied, but they will be looking for long-term relationship at the same time because many of the services cannot be done in-house, including the repair or the overhauling capabilities will be required to have the supply chain for long-term relationship for servicing or the operation. During the operation of the aircraft, they may require maintenance and long-term looking after for any kind of repair or maintenance work. So you can see in the video how many different suppliers from different part of the world can be part of the supply chain, but there are tier 1, tier 2, or even tier 3 suppliers in the supply chain management of the A350 Airbus, for example. So if you look into the tier 1 or the tier 2 supply chain, you can see there is organizations, they are providing supplies to the Airbus or for example Boeing. This is almost worldwide. It's quite global presence of the end-to-end supply chain, both upstream and downstream. We can see the the Airbus A350 is meant to answer some of the limitation of, for example, which was from the earlier version A330 by offering more space for the passenger as well as elite luxury parts, including, let's say, Rolls-Royce engine. So it's a very niche market, and then you can see how the supplies of such organization with larger components or key composite parts that make up the plane that have not been coming without different issues. So big suppliers have to see number of problems to fulfill the order. They also need some time, not for the organization with a large scale product, but also there will be need for other suppliers coming with some smaller or maybe at the same time complex components that have created because of the high-tech niche market of the specification of this product. So specifically the second tier suppliers are they are more focused to manufacturing much more complex part than they are used to be making in the usual, casual or routine work. So Airbus product process have some of them which are unable to perform under the pressure of time unless until there is a mutual agreement and long-term relationship between different airlines and the manufacturer, even if it is Airbus or is a Boeing. So this is a vast global supplier network in the aeroplane. It is believed that approximately more than 8,000 direct suppliers or around maybe 15 to 20,000 indirect suppliers from more than 100 countries worldwide. So that's quite a long, a huge network of supply chain when thousands of suppliers are involved, and we can see that the component system or services to the airline, it's not just the product to be supplied, but number of services the airlines are looking to be getting engaged with different suppliers. This is vast global supplier network that makes major contribution to the whole creation, economic prosperity and sustainability development in the communities in which airline operates. So aerospace or aviation or airline suppliers thus have a significant impact to see for sustainability performance of the airline. Though we can see how to identify and then mitigate any risk within the supply chain of this huge network where 10 to 20,000 direct or indirect suppliers are involved. So the airline basically require suppliers to meet the same environment and social responsibility standard that they set for themselves. These standards are clearly outlined in the supplier code of conduct of the aviation or aerospace industry. And of course, this is America, Europe, worldwide, quite strict set standards for different components of the supply chain from thousands of suppliers, either in their tier 1 or tier 2 supplier. But the most important part here, even if it is an aviation kind of complex set of network, supply chain upstream and downstream, this is very important that the supply chain management is taken as a management of the flow of goods and services, which includes all processes that transform raw material into final product. It involves the active streamlining of business supply side activities to maximize customer value and gain competitive advantage in marketplace. And we can see that the technologies they are used, for example, this supply chain management software or the cloud-based enterprise resource planning, we can find end-to-end from the procurement to inventory, logistic, to the product life cycle, the preferential pricing, lead time, and demand management with vertical integrated partnership is the complete cycle, because the function of supply chain management is a cross-functional approach that include managing the movement of raw material into organization, certain aspect of the internal processing of material into finished product, and the movement of finished goods out of the organization and toward the end consumer. So the different types of supply chain software are can be considered as a key tools for lean inventory, supply chain, order processing, demand forecasting, logistics, and collaborative tools, as well as warehousing and a number of other bid and spend tools to be applied within the complete cycle of the supply chain management. So that is important, that the supply chain management is the management of both relationship with customers or suppliers on the other end, and flow of material and information, as well as in finance, both upstream and downstream, across the entire network of the particular organization. So we can see in this graphical illustration from raw material to key components to come to the manufacturing plant, and then it goes downstream to the retail and to the customer. This is how we can go to the end goal, and the ultimate purpose of supply chain management is to create value in production of goods and services that can enhance efficiency and satisfy the end consumer. And we are looking to, let's say, the SLAC in your core textbook. SLAC has identified that, and this is very clearly stated, that supply chain management is basically a systematic approach of managing the entire flow of information. It's just not the material, information, material, and services from raw material supplier through factories and warehouses to the end consumer. And this is the end-to-end, when the customer or consumer or stakeholder, they are looking for, and how it gonna be processed, manufactured, and then distributed through logistics to reach to the end customer. So that is the complete flow of the material along with information and after sales services through the complete network of supply chain management, as it is being described and stated by SLAC in his 2010 edition. So supply chain management, when we are looking, that has to meet the ultimate goal of satisfying the end consumer requirements, and that requires supply chain to maximize a level of 5 key performance objectives. So the key KPIs with the supply chain management, we have to think of the organization, that what are the gaps and how we can do planning and execution in supply chain, the metrics that are set up to monitor one or more of the key performance indicators, because the idea is we need to ensure that the quality cannot be compromised. That is very important, that the customer are happy, and you can track and trace with the speed delivery as it is promised, faster and better. That is innovations and dependability, how you are reliable the product has been promised to be delivered, because all the operation activities can be dependent when it is promised to be delivered, and the flexibility if it is required. And then again, we need to think about the cost at the same time, and that is how innovation play an important part as the key performance indicator to do better, faster, and even cheaper. So the evolution, how it is evolving, the supply chain management, we can see in this graphical illustration from 1960s to 80s to 1990s, 2000 and 2010 onward, how it is evolving. The supply chain management is a continuous upgradation. The evolution of supply chain management has been categorized by an increasing degree of integration of separate tasks, a trend that was underlined in 1960s as a key area for future productivity improvement, since the system was highly fragmented. So the main driving force behind the development of supply chain management over the past 20-30 years have been the desire to minimize inventory level and apply just-in-time approach or just-in-time model on lean synchronization. For example, in 1980s, companies or organizations discovered new manufacturing techniques that allowed them to reduce cost and better to become better competing in different market worldwide. And you can see the consolidation And then integration was the more important key development within the evolution of the supply chain management. And then the value capturing. This is where technology came in playing its part, and many organizations, they embedded or they welcomed and they embraced with technology for their strategic planning and finance marketing through online services and e-procurement even, and e-services, or as we discussed last time, the e-commerce feature for buying and selling online, and taking many the middle agents, just eliminating, and directly customers can approach to the manufacturer. And then 2010, we have seen that how the robotics, for example, till 2020, now we are even we have seen that the Amazon, for example, they introduced drone for delivery of different packages to customer door. We know the for example, the small robots, they are working in Milton Keynes. They're just doing deliveries for supply chain, part of the supply chain. They call it a super starship, small robots, and we can see there will be more advancement with the coming time, as the technology is becoming the key important part of the end-to-end supply chain management. The key development in supply chain management, if you look to this 6 slides, we can see the reduced transport intensity of the freight is one of the important development. International trade was traditionally dominated by bulky raw material. These have relatively low value to volume ratio, for example. Now, with the development, we can see in process and finished product now play a much greater role in world trade. These have much high value to volume ratio. As a result, manufacturers are incentivized to ship these product in order to better absorb transport cost. So we know that the key benefit or the development from the different freight that we have is not just a huge bulk material to be supplied, but rather to have then the inventory and stock. Just in time supply is more appropriately practiced in different organizations. And we can also see that falling the prices of goods and services and other key development, and that is because we have seen the greater competition because it's a global market and international competition is increasing. So that means the market prices are decreasing or they're falling down, and that have forced different organizations to reduce their cost to be more competitive in the market. Supply chain management has given this pressure on the organization because of the competition from worldwide market. It is not anymore the monopoly of one or particular organization. Rather, the competition is coming from different other businesses from other part of the world. So cutting cost of the goods and services themselves result in falling sometime quality and potentially damaging the strategic positioning of any organization. So therefore, companies are forced on cutting cost, not just the quality. So they are looking that to keep the not compromise on quality or the quality of their product and services, to keep it with the desired result or their set standards, but they can then see where they can become more efficient to reduce cost from other channels, let's say a better supply chain management network. So therefore, companies are forced on cutting the cost in other areas. For example, they don't need to have inventory, they're piling the stock, so they can do just in time approach for their supply demand. For example, the storage and movement of inventory is a key cost-saving area for many organizations, and then they can compete to reduce the price for their product or services. So the key component in supply chain management, we can see further development. The deregulations of transport is one of the key development. Transport market in many countries have been deregulated. Many transport companies now compete instead of just the state providers. There are a number of other competitors coming from private organizations. For example, if you want to send any parcel in UK, Royal Mail is one option. That is the state, let's say, organization. But you have so many options now. So you have DHL, let's say you have FedEx, you have the DPD and DSD. There's so many range of the parcel or package delivery organizations and courier companies. This has removed the barrier to competition and generally brought down the price, and in some cases improved the quality of the services for tracking and tracing and ensuring that how you can be dependable on different organization as they promise to assure the delivery on certain time and date. This has led to the proliferations of more and cheaper transport services within and between nations. It's not just the bulk product to be supplied. Even a small chunk of things can be supplied through the just-in-time model of supply chain management. So the key development in productivity that is improved again. So from let's say in mid-1950s that began a series of remarkable productivity improvement that have led to the international transport being able to handle the volume we see today. We can see the different options, the container ship, and the revolution that has the revolution for the maritime freight, for example, and the barcoding. And we know the technology then can provide the frequency for any coding that made logistics and tracking extremely efficient. The emphasis on inventory reduction, again from 1950s onward, there's a revolution in the inventory management that provide at the same time, which was not possible in the past with the fragmentations or the inefficiency. However, the cohesive approach to inventory management lead to cost saving and the flexibility being emphasized often on reducing the inventory volume. The rise of the just-in-time directly lead that has already achieved this development led to more frequent transportation and less stockpiling. We know this is the important element for the change in company structure is another key development. So company processes, the way they are producing or offering services. So companies have tended to become less vertically integrated, rather horizontally integrated and more specialized instead. Outsourcing has increased manifold. They're playing central role in many organizations because many companies, they find it cheaper and faster to outsource rather to do part of the activities of the operation, which can be outsourced rather to do in-house, and that is both economical and as well as that's more efficient. There are again other factors that led to rise the network group of companies, and then again relative demise of silo-based structure also mean greater horizontal integration has led to greater flexibility that's being demanded in order and delivery processes. So that's excellent with the development that we can getting with the technology in place, just-in-time inventory system, and again we have to make sure that the processes, the structure of the organization, and then the overall company's structure has been revived, and this is evolving continuously with a better approach for bringing more productivity and efficiency within the context of end-to-end supply chain management. So when we look to the network diagram for any supply chain, this is where we can see the design of the network. While an increased supply may have the availability for depend on the demand at a set price, or maybe there's a fluctuation and then supply has to continuously grow. But if supply decreases, prices may increase. If supply and demand have an important relationship because together they determine the prices of most goods and services, so we can see how the supply chain management network can be designed with the logistics, inventory, stocking. So we need to basically looking to decreasing the total supply chain cost. So we draw this, we do this diagram to design the network, basically to find out what is the more appropriate or efficient way, because the cost that needs to be decreased. Manufacturer and retailer, they depend on the supply chain. The managers, they design a network that meet customer services, they achieve the set goals and objective. At least the total cost can be reduced then with the efficient approach, because efficient supply chain management or the network design with efficiency can enable any organization to be more competitive in the marketplace. So what are the key benefits from supply chain? We know the benefit are, there's a list of benefits for better calibration, information flow, prominent position to be competitive, and to improve the quality and its checks. So supply chain network helps an understanding of the competitiveness of any organization in end-to-end supply chain management. And when this has been designed, the network, we can see the higher efficiency rate, and we can also focus to reduce the overall or the overhead cost. So the supply network help to identify the significant link in the network, and then we can find out the different supplier supplies during upstream, and then in the downstream supply chain network, how that's going to be diagrammed with the logistic and with the warehouses, and minimizing the cost is more important feature in the design of the network and getting the best out of it as a key benefits. And the supply network diagram can also help to focus on long-term issues to minimize not only the cost but also identify the key risk and mitigate the risk and improve the let's say financial strength and improve the quality, again enhance the efficiency and meet the demand with the fluctuation in the market. And again, shipping the optimized approach for inventory is and the logistic transportation is some of the key benefit that can be achieved. So if you take an example, let's say we have a mall, this is, let's say, duty-free shop at the airport, and we can see if the airport mall needs to be successful to look after their customer. Thousands of people, they pop in out on the airport, passengers departing, arriving, or especially departure or transit passengers, they go to the airport mall for quick shopping. So they can see upstream and downstream the supply chain network, tier 1 and tier 2. We can see the direct supplier and their information. So for the supplier coming from the upstream, so the first tier suppliers, we know the mall and the airport, security people. It can be in-house or it can be outsourced, cleaning services and maintenance. Let's say we take the example that three main organizations, they're providing these services to the airport mall, and these are the tier 1 suppliers. But these suppliers have their own suppliers in tier 2 level of the upstream. So for example, security services to look after the mall for security reasons, cleaning people or companies, and then number of maintenance is required. So these companies, for example, have their own suppliers and second tier suppliers. Let's say the security services need staff, and they have companies, they provide through recruitment agencies the right people for the job, and then they manage these people to provide security to the airport mall. And you can also see the same example for cleaning company and maintenance company, different equipment, surveillance cameras, technology, maintenance. So they all can be done with different other companies they're providing as their supplier in the second tier of the upstream. Downstream of the supply chain network, you can see the first tier is the customer retailer. So there are different outlets. Let's say you have shops, different brands, they have their outlet in the airport mall, so they make their presence to sell their goods or services. Let's say there is international currency exchange, there is for example outlet of Nike or let's say Boots, and then they have number of suppliers as coming to the mall from tier 1 and tier 2. But from upstream to downstream, we again have the first tier customer with the mall. They have their outlet and they rent out the place within the mall, but then they have to have their own customers. So they are basically the consumer who buy from these retails, and they are basically customers. They are in the right end of the tier 2 customers, and they buy from retailer, and retailer become customer to the airport mall. So both upstream and downstream, the whole network diagram give a perfect example that how the direct supply as well as the information is needed on end-to-end supply chain network, let's say in the example of airport mall, or you can apply the same example to any other shopping mall that we are visiting for our personal reasons or family reason. So complete of the discussion, you can continue with your discussion on the forum. What do you think is the future from if you see back from 1950s, 60s, 80s, 90s, and 2000 and 2010. Now we are in 2021. What do you see the future of supply chain? How we can see the success, and what else we can see in the development of supply chain, along with the key models that has been already developed or adopted, and it is evolving continuously. Share your thoughts, read the chapter from your core books, and take good care.